Hey guys, welcome to First for Friday. First one I'm going to do today is The Girl in the Locked Room by Mary Downing Hahn. This one was donated to our classroom by Lily, and it was actually quite a few people wanted this one in our classroom. So we're really excited that she got it for us. So thank you, Lily. A girl is in a locked room in an old abandoned house. She has been hiding there for more than 100 years. She is afraid and she is lonely. Now another lonely girl arrives. Jules and her family have moved so often that she has never had a chance to make friends and put down roots. Once again, she's starting over in a new place. This time, a ruined house, where a pale face appears in an upstairs window. Who is the mysterious figure on the top floor? First fearful, then fascinated, Jules is determined to befriend the girl in the locked room. Past and present intersects as the girl unlocks the door and discovers the chilling secret history of the family who lived in the house all those many years ago. Got to see the picture on the back too, because it's kind of spooky. Chapter 1, The Girl. The girl is alone in the locked room. At first, she writes the day of the week, the month, and the year on the wall. She means to keep a record of her time in the room, but after a while she begins skipping a day or several days. Soon days, months, and years become a meaningless jumble. She forgets her birthday, and then her name. But what does it matter? No one comes to visit. No one asks her name. No one asks how old she is. At first, the room seems large, but soon it shrinks, or seems to. It becomes a prison. The key disappeared long ago. No matter. She's afraid to leave. They're waiting for her to open the door. She feels their presence, faint in the daytime, but solid and loud at night. Their boots storm up the steps. They hammer on the door. They yell for her to come out. But how can she? The door is locked from the outside. Even if she wanted to, she could not obey their commands. She huddles in the shadows, her eyes closed, fingers in her ears, and waits for them to leave. The trouble is, they always come back. Not every night, but often enough that she always waits to hear the horses gallop toward the house, to hear their boots on the stairs, to hear their fists on the door. She used to know who they were and why they came, but now she knows only that they are bad men who will hurt her if they find her. They say they won't, but she doesn't believe them. So she huddles in the wardrobe under a pile of old dresses and doesn't move until she hears their horses gallop away. Every morning the girl looks at a date written on the wall, June 1st, 1889. She doesn't remember why she wrote the date or what happened that day. Indeed, she isn't even sure she wrote it. Maybe someone else, some other girl, was here once. Maybe that girl wrote the date. Someone, perhaps that other girl, certainly not herself, drew pictures on the wall. They tell a story, a terrible story. The story frightens her. It makes her cry sometimes. In a strange way, she knows the story is true. The story is about her. Not the girl she is now, but perhaps the girl she used to be before they locked her in this room. But who was that girl? A girl should remember her own name, if nothing else. Why is her brain so fuzzy? Near the end of the picture story, men on horses gallop to the house. They must be the ones who come to her door at night. Did they draw the pictures to scare her? There are other paintings in the room, real paintings, beautiful paintings. A few hang on the walls, but most lean against the wall. The same people are in most of them. A pretty woman, a little girl with yellow hair, a bearded man, a family. She pretends she's this little girl. The woman is her mother, the man is her father. She must have had a mother and a father once. Doesn't everyone? She talks to them, and she talks for them. They have long, made-up conversations that she never remembers for more than a day. If only she could bring them to life. They look so real. Why can't they step out of the paintings and keep her company? Spooky. The next one is The Unteachables by Gordon Korman. Sounds kind of like another one that we've done. The Unteachables are a notorious class of misfits, delinquents, and academic train wrecks. Like Aldo, with anger management issues, Parker, who can't read, Kiana, who doesn't even belong in his class or any class, and Elaine, rhymes with pain, The unteachables have been removed from the student body and isolated in room 117. Their teacher is Mr. Zachary Kermit, the most burned out teacher in all of Greenwich. He was once a rising star, but his career was shattered by a cheating scandal that still haunts him. After years of phoning it in, he is finally 1 year away from retirement. But the superintendent has his own plans to torpedo that idea, and it involves assigning Mr. Kermit to the unteachables. The unteachables never thought they'd find a teacher who had a worse attitude than they did, and Mr. Kermit never thought he would actually care about teaching again. Over the course of a school year, though, room 117 will experience mayhem, destruction, and maybe even a shot at redemption. This one is a Lexile level of 740. Oh, the girl in the locked room was Lexile of 650. So this one, 740. Chapter 1, Kiana Robini. It's no fun riding to school with the step monster, not with Chauncey screaming his lungs out in the back seat. Don't get me wrong, I'd cry too if I just figured out that step monster is my mother, but at 7 months old, I don't think he's processed that yet. He just cries. He cries when he's hungry, he cries when he's full, he cries when he's tired, he cries when he wakes up after a long nap. Basically, any day that ends in a Y, Chauncey cries. There also seems to be a connection between his volume control and the gas pedal of the SUV. The louder he howls, the faster step monster drives. Who's the happy baby? She coos over her shoulder in the back seat, where the rear-facing car seat is anchored. Who's the happy big boy? Not Chauncey, that's for sure, I tell her. Hey, school zone, you better slow down. She speeds up. Motion is soothing to a baby. Maybe so. But as we slalom up the driveway, swerving around parked parents, dropping off their kids, and screech to a halt by the entrance, turns out to be one motion too many. Chauncey throws up his breakfast. Suddenly, there's cereal on the ceiling and dripping down the windows. That's another thing about Chauncey. His stomach is a food expander. It goes in a teaspoon and comes out 5 gallons. Get out of the car, Step Monster orders frantically. You have to come in with me, I protest. They won't let me register without an adult. She looks frazzled. And I guess I don't blame her. That much baby puke must be hard to face. I'll run home, change him, and wipe down the car. Wait for me. 10 minutes. 15 at the most. What can I do? I haul my backpack out of the SUV, and she zooms off around the circular drive. I don't even have the chance to make my usual Parmesan cheese joke. That's what it smells like when Chauncey barfs. When I first came from California to stay with Dad and Step Monster, I thought they ate a lot of Italian food. That was a disappointment. One of many. So there I am in front of Greenwich Middle School, watching swarms of kids arriving for the first day of classes. A few of them glance in my direction, but not many. New girl? Who cares? Actually, the new girl doesn't much care either. I'm a short timer. I'm only in Greenwich for a couple of months while Mom is off in Utah shooting a movie. She's not a star or anything like that, but this could be her big break. After years of paying the bills with bit parts in sitcoms and TV commercials, she finally landed an independent film. Well, no way I could go with her for 8 weeks. Not that I was invited. Eventually, a bell rings and the crowd melts into the school. No Step Monster. I'm officially late, which isn't the best way to start my career in Greenwich. But short timers don't stress over things like that. Long before it could come back to haunt me on a report card, I will be ancient history. Okay, that's the first 4 of the Unteachables. The next one, actually the next 2, are both by Catherine Lasky. She does a lot of animal stories. So the first one is Horses of the Dawn, The Escape. This one is a Lexile level of 730. Run wild, run free. A horse is born in the middle of the wide ocean on a galleon sailed to the New World by men seeking gold. Estrella is born to run, but she's kept in a sling and her hooves can't touch the ground. She's born for the land, but all she knows is the rocking of the sea. She's born to be free, but she and her mother are owned. Then the men decide that the weight of the horses is slowing their ship. They throw the weakest and the oldest into the water. The horses believe they are doomed, but over the salt air, Estrella picks up the scent of land and that she's almost forgotten. A wild land of sweet grass where they can live free. Can one young horse lead a herd across thousands of miles, through jungle and desert, facing down predators and greedy men? This is the story of a horse born with a destiny. This is the story of the rise of the horses of the dawn. Throwing horses in the water, so sad. It starts off with a picture of horses in the water. So it looks like it's sectioned off like that. So we've got a section for water, and then in here there's a section for earth. So there's a few different sections like that. Chapter 1, the foal. The mare felt the foal shift inside her and kicked her leg in discomfort. The foal was coming soon, and the mare should have been on 4 legs instead of buried in a hold, hanging in a sling, rocked by every wave the ship encountered. The mare should have been surrounded by straw, or better yet, soft grass in a meadow. What a place to be born, she thought. A pitching ship in the middle of a sea? The mare could sense the restlessness of the other horses around her. They knew what was about to happen. The beam of the ship was wide, and ahead of her she could see at least 8 other horses, ears twitching. The smaller animals, the goats and the pigs, were in separate stalls and out of sight, but it was the horses the mare cared about. She could see their ears flick forward, listening for the men, and then pivot back to her to hear if her berth had started. They were in the mid-deck hold near the pillars of the brigantine's 2 masts. Their stalls were padded with bales of straw so the horses wouldn't be injured when their slings swung too violently. The mare looked down at her legs, hanging uselessly in the shadows. Her hooves barely touched the floorboards. The mid-deck was sweltering. Breezes couldn't reach the hold, and there was little light. The horses couldn't sense the time of day. It was never bright nor completely dark. There was only shadow on a perpetual dimness that was not like any dawn or twilight the mare had ever known. The last time she had foaled, it had been in a stall on land, dry, unmovable land, and the time before that, in a meadow. It was, of course, the best place of all to give birth. She remembered that colt well. His coat was beautiful, dappled like a herd of small moons sliding behind clouds. She called him Sombra Luna, Shadow Moon. And now another was on its way. Was it possible, she wondered, what the seeker and his men did not know? She herself had been surprised. She thought she was much too old to foal, but surely they had seen her belly when they fitted the sling around her on the day before the voyage began from the first island. No one had said anything, but perhaps they were anticipating a short trip, and the distances had turned out to be greater than they'd thought. She'd heard the blacksmith and the groom talking about how long the voyage was taking. The groom was just a boy, as gawky as the foal soon to be born. She felt a sudden wrenching pain and gasped. The young groom leapt from his hammock and rushed to her stall. The ocean had grown a bit calmer, but the mare's sling swayed back and forth in a disconcerting rhythm. The groom stroked her head. His eyes fell upon the large stain that was spreading rapidly through the canvas of the sling. "Dios mío!" he screeched. Within seconds, the blacksmith was there with another groom. "It can't be!" the blacksmith exclaimed. "It is," the mare thought. She gave him a withering gaze. The young groom's eyes had fastened on the wall, the small wooden carving of a woman with a darkly stained face, her hands pressed together in prayer. His mouth moved as if he were speaking to her. "Don't pray for the Virgin, foolish boy. Get the doctor," the blacksmith ordered. "Who's foolish?" thought the mare. "All of you." The men had been too obsessed with their dreams of gold to see that the old mare could be in full. The doctor came. The sling was lowered and the stall was quickly banked with some more straw bales. "Calma, calma," the blacksmith whispered. Was he telling her to be calm, or the sea? The mare wondered. She hoped it was the sea. Giving birth was hard enough on dry land, and the ocean seemed to be growing more boisterous. But she could take care of herself. What troubled her was the thought of her foal being born in the hold and confined to a sling. How would a foal ever learn to stand on this swelling sea? She groaned deeply and her eyes rolled back in her head. She could hear the groom praying, but the blacksmith and the doctor remained silent as they removed the sling and helped her lie down against the bales of straw. Time passed, and they couldn't tell how much, but the perpetual half-light of the hold hardly changed from morning to afternoon light. She felt the doctor and the blacksmith both pulling. The front legs were halfway out. One more pull? No, two? "A filly!" the blacksmith finally said, "and so quick!" "She's foaled before," the doctor said, while clearing off the smooth white sack that covered the foal's body. Hey, there's the first 4 of that one, and the last one is The Guardians of Ga'Hoole. Some of you may have read or seen this movie. It's pretty good. This is a Lexile level of 730. Soren is born in the forest of Tydo, a tranquil kingdom where the barn owls dwell. But evil lurks in the owl world, evil that threatens to shatter Tydo's peace and change the course of Soren's life forever. Soren is captured and taken to a dark, forbidding canyon. It's called an orphanage, but Soren believes it's something far worse. And he and his friend Gylfi know that the only way out is up. To escape, they will need to do something they have never done before: fly. And so it begins a magical journey. Along the way, Soren and Gylfi meet Twilight and Digger. The four owls band together to seek the truth and protect the owl world from unimaginable danger. Starts with a map. It's always fun reading a book with maps because you can go back and see and kind of make connections as you're reading. Chapter 1, A Nest Remembered. Noctis, can you spare a bit more down, darling? I think our third little one is about to arrive. That egg is beginning to crack. Not again, sighed Clud. What do you mean, Clud, not again? Don't you want another little brother? His father said. There was an edge to his voice. Or sister, his mother sighed, the low, soft whistle barn owls sometimes use. I'd like a sister, Soren peeped up. You just hatched about 2 weeks ago, Clud turned to Soren, his youngest brother. What do you know about sisters? Maybe, Soren thought to himself, they would be better than brothers. Clud seemed to have resented him since the moment he had first hatched. You really wouldn't want them arriving just when you're about to begin branching, Clud said dully. Branching was the first step, literally, toward flight. The young owlets would begin hopping off a branch, from branch to branch, and flapping their wings. Now, Clud, his father admonished. Don't be impatient. There will be time for branching. Remember, you won't have your flight feathers for at least another month or more. Soren was just about to ask what a month was when he heard a crack. The owl family seemed to freeze. To any other forest creature, the sound would have been imperceptible, but barn owls were blessed with extraordinary hearing. It's coming, Soren's mother gasped. I'm so excited. She sighed again and looked rapturously at the pure white egg as it rocked back and forth. A tiny hole appeared, and from it protruded a small spur. It's Eggtooth by Glocks, Soren's father exclaimed. Mine was bigger, wasn't it, Da? Clud shoved Soren aside for a better look, but Soren crept back under his father's wing. Oh, I don't know, son, but isn't it a pretty glistening little point? Always gives me a thrill. Such a tiny little thing, pecking its way into the big wide world. Ah, bless my gizzard, the wonder of it all. It did indeed seem a wonder. Soren stared at the hole now that it began to split into 2 or 3 cracks. The egg shuddered slightly, and the cracks grew longer and wider. He had done this himself just 2 weeks ago. This was exciting. What happened to my egg tooth, Mum? It dropped off, stupid, Clud said. Oh, Soren said quietly. His parents were so absorbed in the hatching that they didn't reprimand Clud for his rudeness. Where's Mrs. P? Mrs. P? His mother said urgently. Right here, ma'am. Miss Plivither, the old blind snake who had been with the owl family for years and years, slithered into the hollow. Blind snakes, born without eyes, served as nest maids and were kept by many owls to make sure the nests were clean and free of maggots and various insects that found their way into the hollows. Mrs. P, no maggots or vermin in that corner where Noctis put in fresh down. Course not, ma'am. Now, how many broods of owlets have I been through with you? Oh, sorry, Mrs. P, how could I have ever doubted you? I'm always nervous about the hatching. Each one is just like the first time. I never get used to it. Don't you apologize, ma'am. You think any other birds would care 2 whits if their nest was clean? The stories I've heard about seagulls, oh my goodness. Well, I won't even go into it. Blind snakes prided themselves on working for owls, whom they considered the most noble birds. Meticulous, the blind snakes had a great disdain for other birds that felt they were less clean due to their unfortunate digestive processes that caused them to eliminate only sloppy wet droppings instead of nice, neat bundles, the pellets that owls yarped or spit up. The owls did digest the soft parts of their food in a manner similar to the other birds, and indeed passed it in a liquid form. For some reason, they were never associated with these lesser digestive processes. All the fur and bones and tiny teeth of their prey, like mice, that could not be digested in the ordinary way, were pressed into little pellets, just the shape and size of the owl's gizzard. Several hours after eating, the owls would yarp them up. Wet poopers is how many nest-made snakes referred to their other birds. Of course, Mrs. Plither was much too proper to use such coarse language. "Mum!" Soren gasped. "Look at that!" The nest suddenly seemed to reverberate with a huge cracking sound. Again, only huge to the ear slits of barn owls. Now the egg split. A pale, slimy blob flopped out. "It's a girl!" A long shriek call streamed from his mother's throat. It was the shriek of pure happiness. "Adorable!" Soren's mother sighed. "Enchanting," said Soren's father. Claude yawned, and Soren stared dumbfounded at the wet, naked thing with its huge, bulging eyes sealed tightly shut. "What's wrong with her head, Mum?" Soren asked. "Nothing, dear. Chicks just have very large heads. It takes a while for their bodies to catch up. Not to mention their brains," Claude muttered. "So they can't hold their heads up right away," said his mother. "You were the same way." "What shall we call the little dear?" Soren's father asked. "Eglantine," Soren's mother replied immediately. "I have always wanted a little eglantine." And that is the first 4 of Guardians of Ga'Hoole. So I hope that you enjoyed these books, and I hope that you are reading a lot every day. Read lots. That's the best way to improve every aspect of your education. I miss you guys and hope to see you soon.